What was it like working on a brand new script?
All right. Well, actually, I had experience with working on a new script before. They did and for my first semester here. There was a studio production where a student wrote a play and we performed it. So this is the second time I've done something like this, but I kind of find it kind of humbling because of the fact that it's a work in progress. It's something brand new, and we also have the opportunity of having the playwright with us, which is something that a lot of people, when you're renting a script or performing a show that has already been done like 1,000 times, you don't get that opportunity usually. I mean, some people probably do. They could probably reach out to the playwright, but not in this more personal, way of being able to have them there, and also for something that is brand new that no one has ever seen before or heard of. Like, it's just humbling.
Okay. Next question. What are some of your favorite parts about working on a new character?
All right. Well, it kind of depends on the character. If there's a whole lot of depth, I try to, especially, I guess I can kind of explain that. So, for like Father Michael is a priest, but I felt that the show was going into the direction of kind of the human aspect of the person who is Michael. So I knew kind of how like priesthood kind of is. I've been part of Sunday school in high school and all of my middle school, just pretty much all my life I've been doing Sunday school up until I graduated high school. So I kind of understood where all these things come from, and that, that in like the way that the priest would talk, whatever, it's always to discover that deeper meaning for things and trying to comfort people in times of need and to hear out other people. But in this show, Michael, like, one thing you would never think of, a priest that has a temper, of all things, like, that's something that I don't think many people seen. And I just, with a character like Michael, having basically, with Gwen being a friend of his, well, Sister Catherine at that point, being a friend of his, that really deep down, all I could think of is, this is just a person that's grieving. And though he has the priestly duties of trying to help out Whitney, I kind of saw how it was two people kind of reconciling with each other. And both of them being grieving, both of them wanting comfort, and how their roles kind of switched out throughout the entire thing. And I could only think of that as Michael as a real person, and that's what I kind of went through. I went on to think of what it was like to have Michael around Sister Catherine. What was their relationship like? Why is he so hurt with her passing? Like, just answering those kind of questions is kind of how I took the direction of this character. But it is exciting always to play different characters. There's just an endless amount of characters. So, but this was an opportunity that it was nice to be able to put some thought into it.
Last question. What were some challenges that you faced while creating Father Michael?
I'm trying to think of things that are not going to be redundant over. I kind of mashed up this question and the other. But as for challenges, like, another thing too, I'm not a priest. I don't know anything about that. I kind of, like, I got like a field trip to the seminary once for church, and we you know, we weren't really allowed. We were just allowed in the entrance. That was about it. So kind of trying to understand completely what it's like to go through that and kind of understand where Father Mike has to be a priest.
Trying to fully like embody the character.
Yeah, trying to, yeah. But I did my best in that regard. A challenge is that I've kind of struggled with is getting to that deeper level. A lot of the times when I read something like this and I look at the script, the first read usually is as like brick wall or whatever, and kind of the struggle of how this show goes with all the different types of emotions and feelings and that underlining sense of grief. It took a lot to try to think of how to put myself into the shoes to fully be able to experience, as a character, me playing a character, how those emotions would play out. How will some quip from Whitney alter the way that Michael is feeling? And it's kind of a step-by-step thing of knowing, action and reaction, along with those overlying undertones of feelings that this character has. And it's in order to get over that challenge, kind of I have to put myself into those shoes to try to understand, even though some of the things that happen, the experience that this character has is some things I've never dealt with, but just to imagine being in those shoes and trying to be as authentic reaction-wise, emotionally, as I can with this character. But after a while, it got easier as I got to understand and learn more from the show. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay. What was it like working on a brand new script? How did this experience compare to working on already published plays?
So a brand new script is really interesting in that basically with this one, only one school has ever done it before, and they only did a stage reading, and we're doing like an actual staging. So it's interesting, but also a challenge because you don't have a precedent to follow, and you can't like look at someone else's performance and go, maybe I could do that. It's all about like building it yourself while also respecting the playwright's intention. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's kind of how it's different from working on already published work, the already done work before, mm-hmm. in that sense, where it's more of a challenge, but it's also more exciting.
Mm-hmm. And following on that, what are your favorite parts about working on a new character? What were some things you had challenges with because it's like a brand new thing you're working on?
So I loved working on Whitney because it's just basically building this brand new person up from the ground because no one's ever really built Whitney before. So I loved building Whitney from scratch and learning from Dr. Campbell about everything he wants for Whitney, but also putting my own spin on Whitney. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges was figuring out who Whitney was as a person. Like, what are her mannerisms? Like, what is she like? What is she not like? And because, again, there's no precedent. So it's exciting to build someone up from the ground, but also a challenge.
Okay, that's it. Thanks, Allie.
Yay!
What inspired you to write about this subject matter in particular?
Yeah, so my dissertation and my research agenda focuses on depictions of alcoholism on the American stage, and I argue and believe that we can use theater to subvert stigmas and stereotypes, and by telling a story, we are able to break down barriers and preconceived notions that audience members and even participants might be carrying, unconscious biases or just biases in general, and we can focus more on the issues of the disease itself. And so my previous plays have focused more on the protagonist dealing with some sort of substance abuse dependency issue. And so this is, with Faithfall, I'm looking at how addiction, in this case alcoholism and addiction, affect the people around us. And so we have two characters coming together who are grieving the loss of somebody that they loved, but they have very different understandings of who that person was. One person knows her as the abusive alcoholic. The other person knows her as somebody who has been in recovery for quite some time, and so their relationship with the same individual, they're grieving the same individual, but it's a completely different person. And so the impetus for this story, my wife and I were driving to Illinois, and her great aunt was a nun and who had just passed away. And it was right around the time that Anthony Bourdain had committed suicide, and Kate Spade, and some other high-profile suicides, and some suicides in the area as well. So it was very much on my mind, and I just combined those two things, asking what happens to a nun who commits suicide, and so it was kind of a thought exercise. What would happen to a character in that situation, and then I combined it with the other two characters and their response to her death. And so that was the initial impetus for the play. But I really, really grew to like the characters themselves. And I enjoyed not having any sort of emotional or personal investment in the story. A lot of my characters, I'm writing from my own experiences. And so being able to separate myself from that and take a different perspective, I really grew to just enjoy these two strangers coming together and having a conversation and being forever changed by that conversation. And so hopefully audiences will be able to dig into that and see that we can have those difficult conversations, and it gives them, even though it's sad and there's some hard content, hopefully they walk away with a little bit of hope. And a deeper understanding, a deeper appreciation of how complicated those issues can really be.
Sometimes while writing, it can be easy to insert facets of our own personalities into our characters. How do you combat this or use it to your benefit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have parts of ourselves in the characters that we're writing. I do think it's a bad thing when you are inserting yourself into a character and you're trying to resolve issues that you yourself haven't resolved yet. And so having your own ideas and your philosophies infused into your characters is an opportunity for you to explore those things. But it also can be inhibiting too if you're trying to manipulate a character's agenda or a character's objective to do what you want to do, as opposed to what's right for the story. So I think it's just important to have an objective understanding of what is good for the play, what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate. I think a lot of my characters have a similar sense of humor, sort of dry, sarcastic, to a certain extent, and that's definitely me. That's there's a lot of stuff in my plays that makes me laugh that probably doesn't make anybody else laugh, and that is potentially problematic. But it's also that's also a part of how I write and who I am. So and I think with a lot of other things, with anything, it's about finding the right balance and being service to the story, being in service to the story.
What's your favorite part about workshopping a brand new play? Is there a particular process you look forward to doing?
I think my favorite part about workshopping a new play is sort of the bookend experiences, the first reading and then the first time it's in front of an audience. The first time I get to hear a play and it's outside of my head, it's no longer mine. It's being interpreted by another performer, several performers, and all of a sudden I don't have ownership over it. It's somebody else's to do with as they please, and that's part of the collaborative art of theater. and that extends to the second experience, which is the audience's experience, and that's really what we're doing it for, is the audience being that last component of the craft and what we do. So being able to sit in an audience and experience how they are experiencing it. Where do they laugh? Where do they start getting bored? When do they start shifting in their seats and checking their watches? And so in that first exposure to an audience, I'm probably watching the audience more than I am watching the performance, because it's so telling to me about what is working and what is not within the text itself. So for me, the workshop experience is from sort of that first initial private reading with just the performers or director, all the way to the time that it's in front of audiences. And even then, I'm still going to make revisions and work on it a little bit. So for me, the workshop experience can be as long of an experience as the writing process is. And I think it's all telling and all interesting. But if I were to pinpoint two, it'd be the bookend experiences.